topic title is Beyond Wait and See, Science-Backed Solutions for Cognitive Health. So if you recall about 3 months ago, if you are a regular to a lot of our wellness webinars, I did a topic on lifestyle strategies for cognitive health. And we talked about all the different things that we can do, that we are in charge of when it comes to our cognition and our brain health. And I went through all the motions and kind of all the pillars, from nutrition to fitness to sleep to stress. And I ended with this idea of cognitive rehab, and that turned into a bubble of interest. A lot of you have emailed me since then or found me in the gym and asked me more about that. What does that mean? So that's kind of today's topic. Is I'm going to refresh our memory on the lifestyle strategies, but then I asked Samantha to come in and talk to us a bit more on that cognitive rehab side of things and what they do at NewDays, so that you get more information, just because there was so much interest. So to refresh our memories on what cognition actually is, it's our brain function. It's how we interact with our world around us through our experiences, through our senses. And there are four main areas of cognition, and you can think of them as volume knobs. That's how I visually like to think of them, because some areas may be more or less defined, or you may have symptoms in one or more areas and not the others of cognition. So we have memory, we have attention, and interestingly enough, those two often get confused. Is we may think, wow, my memory has significantly declined, but what's actually happened is we're not paying really close attention in the first place to cement the memory. And so it's not the memory, it's the attention piece that we need to build a strategy around. We also have cognitive function. Cognitive function is what we consider our CEO, if you will, of our brain. It sort of coordinates all of the mental processes. It's how we regulate our daily functions. It's how we interact with people. It's the working memory, so remembering things as you go. It's our cognitive flexibility, being okay with things shifting throughout the day, our problem solving. And then we have processing speed, and that can be related to a lot of different things, but processing speed is really important when we're driving, right? If someone shoots out in front of us, it comes into play in sports and physical activities. So all four of these, there are aspects of them that intermingle, that overlap. They're not really in their own silos, but there do seem to be areas where we can enhance each of these different knobs and or have symptoms in each of these different knobs of cognition. So when we're thinking about symptoms of cognitive decline, which is, by the way, the #1 reported concern of all people over the age of 65 in the United States. The #1 is cognitive decline, because it's scary to think about not having as great of a memory or being able to process things as quickly. This is normal spectrum of aging and cognition. Everyone will have a slight decline of cognitive function over time as they age. Those are those green arrows at the top. That's very, very slight. We're talking like a 5% decline. So normal aging shouldn't be something scary. It doesn't mean we shouldn't focus on it. It doesn't mean that there aren't things we can do now to start even slowing that progression even more. But it's the blue arrow and then that dark blue and the red arrow that are the ones that we really want to be thinking hard about. And what can we do to either prevent those from happening into mild MCI, mild, moderate dementia, and or at least slow with the onset and slow the progression. So maybe we do have a genetic component that makes us at very high risk of dementia. That doesn't mean dementia has to hit when we're 65 or 70. What if we can offset that? Or what if we can offset the symptoms of that? And we can do those things through some lifestyle strategies. So we first need to understand what this idea of cognitive reserve is. And it's truly, I love this picture so much, because that's what it is. It's your brain gas tank. It's how full you are of stimuli, of synaptic connections, of brain volume. Every experience and interaction you have that challenges those four knobs or domains of cognition fill up that cognitive gas tank, that cognitive reserve. And the more you have to lose. And that's kind of what this graph here shows, is that sure, you might have a genetic risk for, let's say, Alzheimer's and dementia. But if you have a really high cognitive reserve, or CR, to begin with, The symptoms of that dementia are happening much later in life, much later in the diagnostic period than if you have really low cognitive reserve. And this was shown really well in something called the nun study, where they studied all this huge group of nuns, and then they were able to look at their brains after the nuns passed away. And a large majority, and I don't remember all the numbers, but a large majority of the nuns, their brains showed plaques like having Alzheimer's and dementia, and yet these women did not have symptoms of dementia. And the idea here is that they had so much brain stimuli and so much cognitive reserve in their lives from being so active constantly and interacting with people all the time and having good strategies that we'll talk about here in a second, that they were able to lose more in the pathology of dementia, that they didn't even feel the dementia hit. So we want to do everything we can to keep building that cognitive reserve and keep the tank toward full as much as possible. How do we do that? How do we create good, healthy, big cognitive reserve that's really full? All the things on the left contribute to cognitive reserve. So mental stimulation. This can be anything from games, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, to talking to people, having conversations, especially ones that really kind of make you think. Even simple strategies like walking on your normal path in a different direction. Active lifestyle, exercise, one of the main areas that we can be really proactive in building cognitive health. And if you want to go deeper into these topics, I will add the link to my webinar a couple of months ago to our email that I send out after this. So definitely dive into that one. Social stimulation, again, those conversations, the hormones, the feel-good hug hormones of hanging out with someone that you love. Cognitive remediation, which is what our friends at NewDays will be telling us about. Physical activity, which is also active lifestyle. And then sleep and stress are also big pieces of that. And the thing that's not really added so much on this side is really good anti-inflammatory eating. The food part is shown on the right-hand side of things that detract from cognitive reserve, being poor education, mood disturbances, poor nutrition, because the more inflamed we are, the less able we can have all of those synaptic connections. Alcohol and drug abuse, because that creates a whole cascade of inflammation. Poor health in general, having metabolic conditions, and then other medical conditions as well. These will all detract from cognitive reserve. So just to jog our memory a bit before we really kind of dive into the cognitive rehab, cognitive remediation side, when we're talking about fitness, and again, go back to the webinar if you want to know the whys and the hows of all of this. Here are your guidelines for exercise, for really truly building cognitive reserve. And this is based on research and well-done studies, these are the types of movement you should be doing on a regular basis. Cardiovascular should be 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous activity. Why? It improves blood flow. Once we get blood flowing into the brain, we have a lot more activity going on up there, which also reduces plaque formation because things aren't getting sticky. You're also going to see improvements in the actual size and the volume of the brain, which helps with preventing degeneration. The downside of cardio is there's not a whole lot of focus on muscle, which is also really important, and it can be monotonous. So I usually tell people, throw in a lot of variety. Don't just go for a 30-minute walk. Yes, that's good for you, but our body kind of adapts and gets bored with it. So if you love walking, go in different directions, go on different paths, maybe up your pace a little bit. Try throwing a spin class in there every once in a while, or going on a swim, trying to change it up a little bit. Resistance exercise. These are for your muscles. Why? Because our muscles are such important factors in actual organs of controlling our blood sugar, which also helps with reducing degeneration of the brain. It can improve the structural components of the brain, reduces the atrophy of matter within the brain, and can actually improve executive function and memory. 2 sessions minimum a week of a resistance training session. Everyone's really different and what works best for them. So I highly recommend you work with a trainer or be part of a class that's more structured for safety, because the downside of resistance exercise is it doesn't often create as much of a cardiovascular emphasis.
Hey,
And then,
Megan.
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. The view is presenter view, so it's a little hard for some folks to see the full slide.
Oh, you
Like we're
should have told me
seeing.
earlier. I thought we were.
Sorry. You were on a
Okay,
roll.
let me swap my views. Okay, let's try this. Is that better?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. All right. The last kind of pillar of exercise. Oh, we good? Okay. The last kind of pillar of exercise is neuromotor or dual tasking. And that's where, think sports. You're running and catching at the same time, or you're talking and walking at the same time. Anything where you're doing a cognitive and a physical movement at the same time is considered neuromotor. And there's awesome research around this being specifically targeted toward cognitive reserve. Think dance, yoga, sports, exergaming. So, a reminder on nutrition and how we eat and cognitive reserve is we basically want to not eat the way most Americans eat because our acronym is the Standard American Diet or SAD diet, which means moving away from ultra processed foods, moving toward what I call FPF. You've heard of SPF. Now you get your FPF, fiber, protein, fat. If that is what the majority of your snacks and meals are made of, are mostly fiber, 25 grams per day, lots of protein, following that 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram per day, and then filling in with healthy fats, meaning from olives, from nuts, from seeds, from avocado. Then there's wiggle room. There's that 20% of our diet wiggle room for the rest of the stuff. But if we're really focusing on fiber, protein, fat majority of the time, we're going to be enhancing our anti-inflammatory state. And by the way, acronyms is a good trick for memory, SPF and FPF. Now you won't forget it. And I will wrap up here with this idea of rest and stress being also huge, very important components of cognitive reserve. Because if that's when we sleep and when we rest is when the actual work gets done. So when you exercise and you're breaking down all these muscles and you're creating all of this kind of tension and stress in the body, the repair and the increase in the muscle and the increase to the brain volume occurs when we're sleeping. And it occurs at different parts of sleep. So we have to get to good sleep. Also, all of the repair and the good work of all the stressful work you do and the good healthy eating you do won't happen if we're constantly in a state of stress with elevated cortisol. So we want to be working on how do we get our stress levels down throughout the day. Doesn't mean you're never going to be stressed, but how do we have practices like breath work or prayer before dinner, and be getting to a point where we're getting healthy sleep throughout the evening. So with that, again, I'll encourage you to go check out the other webinar for more information on that, but I want to make sure we have lots of time to talk about cognitive rehab as well. So I'm going to punt this over to Samantha, and I'm going to give you a quick introduction of her. Samantha Payton is an occupational therapist. So if you're here at the Wellness Center, she's an OT like those on the other side of the building. She specializes in brain health and neurorehabilitation. She has over a decade of experience across inpatient and outpatient and private practice settings. She is a certified brain injury specialist, a certified dementia care specialist, and a women's health coach. Her work centers on helping older adults maintain function, independence, and cognitive vitality, both those aging well and those experiencing changes related to dementia or other neurological conditions. So Samantha, I am going to unshare so you can share your slides and take it away.
Perfect. Thank you for the intro. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Megan, for that wonderful introduction and a perfect lead in to what we're going to be talking about today. I also want to extend a warm welcome to all of the care partners that are joining us, especially as we recognize National Family Caregiver Month and all of the essential, the essential role that you all play really in supporting individuals and families. So thank you all for being here. So my goal for today and for our time together is a few things. One is I hope you leave with a clear understanding of cognitive health. I want you to really understand the growing evidence around cognitive interventions. And then most importantly, I hope that you leave with a renewed sense of hope about the practical and meaningful solutions that are now available to support clients and their families. So I'll just add that we're going to leave some time at the end for some questions. My colleague Rachel is here, so she's going to help us filter through those questions in the chat. So make sure you do that. And if we run out of time, I'll also talk to you about a way that you can connect with some of our team to make sure those questions get answered. So Megan told you a bit about me. Beyond what she said, I always like to highlight that, I've been working in a practical sense for over 10 years, and I've worked a lot with various individuals with all kinds of neurological conditions. But within that, sort of the underlying theme has been that I've supported people through the use of cognitive rehabilitation. And so that's one of the concepts that we're going to talk a little bit about today. I also like to highlight that, like many of you and really many people in general, I have a personal connection to dementia. I have very fond memories of my grandmother who she experienced Alzheimer's. And so I would go over there usually a couple times a week, and I would, give my grandfather a bit of a break. And during that time, her and I would spend hours just going through photo albums and talking about past experiences. And I didn't realize until I was later on in school in occupational therapy that really what I was doing was cognitive stimulation. And so we'll talk a bit about that as well. And I later learned really the positive impact that talking about past events and meaningful events can have on someone's cognition when they're experiencing memory decline. So I share that story with you so you understand that not only do I love this as a professional thing, but also I have a personal tie to this. So let's, before we dive in, I want you to understand a little bit more about who NewDays is and what really drives our work. So at the heart of our mission is really one simple goal. It's to help people live the way they want for really as long as possible. And so I think it's important to understand who is behind the NewDays team and understand that it combines people from across different professions and different industries, those that are really the leaders in the neuroscientific community, those with more of a clinical focus, so our neuropsychologists and our clinical social workers, and then also our top technologists who all came together to make NewDays happen. And so this is one of our co-founders. This is Dan. And this is Dan's dad, Jerry. And Jerry is living with dementia. Jerry is one of 6 siblings, and 5 of them have been diagnosed with dementia. So, of course, Jerry and Dan are obviously very concerned about the changes that, are moving forward in both of their lives. And I mention this because really all of our team members have some sort of personal connection to dementia or memory decline, whether it's they just want to be proactive themselves or they have a family member or a friend or a loved one who is perhaps going through memory changes. And so a huge reason we care about brain health is we know how common it is and how it's becoming more and more common as the aging population grows and changes. So right now in the US, we have 11% of people over the age of 65 that are living with dementia. Another 22% are living with mild cognitive impairment. So that's roughly 1 in 3 older adults that are facing some form of a serious cognitive challenge. And so because 18% of the US population is now over 65, those numbers are only continuing to grow. And so this means there are tens of millions of people who are already grappling with the changes around memory loss, confusion, and then the functional decline that comes along with that. And then, of course, the ripple effects that go on to our friends and our family and our loved one. And so even though we know it's very common, people are not necessarily given many solutions to the problem. And so here, some of the things that people often will hear when they first express concerns about their memory to their doctor. They may be told, well, there's no cure. try to maintain a healthy lifestyle, maybe get your affairs in order, prepare for ongoing decline, or simply they're told to just wait and see. And so when we look at the care partner's reality, often this is not talked about nearly as much as it should be. And we know this from all of the evidence around the evidence that's been looked at for care partners and caregivers, but also from what we've heard from the care partners that we've spoken to. And so often the hardest part is not necessarily managing symptoms, it's living with the uncertainty before they're given support or guidance. And so we know that the emotional wait really begins long before there's a formal diagnosis. We know that care partners often feel very alone, especially when it comes to making decisions and knowing where to start. And similar to what I said in the last slide, families are often told to prepare, wait, watch, and maybe are not told exactly what they can be doing. And so the science is really telling us a different story about how we should be feeling. There really is a sense to feel a sense of hope. And our understanding of the brain, as Megan was talking about, we really understand that the brain has evolved in terms of what we understand around brain plasticity specifically. And Megan was talking a little bit about cognitive reserve. And so when we think about brain plasticity, or neuroplasticity is the other term you may have heard, it's really the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself and form new connections throughout life. So we know that you can change your brain really at any age. And this is what allows us to learn new skills, to adapt after an injury, or to regain abilities that were once lost. And so the common example I always give is, after someone has a stroke, parts of their brain may be damaged. Perhaps they have a motor impairment that's impacted the functional use of one of their upper extremities. But with the right rehabilitation, often brain regions can take over some of those areas of lost functions. And so we know through repeated practice, through therapy, mental effort, the brain can literally rewire itself. And so the same mechanism of plasticity is what underlines recovery. And it's also what allows healthy adults to strengthen or maintain cognitive function as they age. And so the other reason we say that we should be hopeful is that there is really a lot that you can do. And so the Lancet Commission came out with a study last year. And so they looked at the types of risk factors that we could be looking at to help delay or prevent the onset of cognitive decline. And so they found that up to 40% of dementia cases could actually be delayed through some of these different lifestyle factors. And Megan was talking about this a little as well. So things like social isolation, smoking, alcohol use, depression, and then physical inactivity. But we also know that there's more you can do to exercise your brain and not just your body. And so that's where things like cognitive rehabilitation, cognitive stimulation, and cognitive training come in. These are evidence-based ways that we know we can build that resilience and improve our daily functioning. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these. So first is cognitive rehabilitation. So this is a personalized one-to-one process that's led by a trained clinician. And so the focus is on helping you to succeed in your everyday life. For example, learning how to remember your appointments, how to manage your medications, how to plan for future events, or even how to communicate effectively. Really helping you with any functional activity that you may be experiencing difficulty with. So it involves setting goals, creating a plan, checking in on how that plan is going, and also learning about different strategies to address those particular goals. So we say it's kind of like physical therapy, but for the brain. The next one is cognitive stimulation. And so this is really looking at enhancing overall brain function through things like engaging conversations, activities, and social interaction. So it works by really keeping the mind active through things like fostering curiosity, reflection, and connection. So even all of you being here today, this is a form of cognitive stimulation because it's about a topic that you care about. And so we're more actively listening, and so we're engaging our brain in a meaningful way. And the research really shows us that consistent cognitive stimulation can improve our global cognition and also our mood, especially when it's a meaningful dialogue. So not necessarily just puzzles or tests, for example. And I'll ask my colleague Rachel just to share a link about some of the different research studies that support some of the things that I'm talking a little bit about today, in case any of you are curious. And so the last is cognitive training. So this is more structured exercises, and this targets specific brain functions, for example, your attention, your working memory, or your processing speed. So this might be things more like puzzles or computer-based tasks, or even problem-solving activities. And it's designed to really activate and strengthen key neural pathways. And so over time, we know that doing cognitive training can really lead to measurable improvements in cognition, but also in that day-to-day functioning. And so all of these approaches, as I said, they're not hypothetical, they are backed by science. And so we know that now there are well over 300 different clinical trials that look at these three types of interventions. And they've shown a measurable positive effect on our functioning and independence, but most importantly on our quality of life. And the growing body of evidence has really made one thing clear, that non-drug interventions can make a real difference in someone's life, especially if they're personalized, consistent, and if they're accessible. And so I'll highlight just one particular study. This is called the iConnect study. And so it examined the impact of structured, socially engaging conversations on older adults' cognitive function. So the participants in this study met for 30-minute video conversations, and they would do this 4 times a week for 6 months. And essentially what they were doing was practicing cognitive stimulation. And so the experience for the user really felt like you were just chit-chatting about a random topic. But underneath, those conversations were built to really work on a different brain function. For example, your semantic memory, which is your ability to remember facts and events, or your executive functioning, or reminiscing on past events, or verbal fluency, amongst many others. And so the results were really quite remarkable. For individuals who were experiencing mild cognitive impairment, the researchers found measurable improvements on standard cognitive tests, including one key measure of global cognition. But most importantly, the top respondents showed a delay in symptoms of 6 months to 2 years or even more. And so this study really demonstrates that connection itself is a form of therapy. It's a way to activate the brain plasticity, to strengthen those neural networks, and to build cognitive reserve without necessarily relying on medication. And so at NewDays, we've really taken this principle and scaled it. So we combine those same evidence-based mechanisms and combine it with clinical support, as well as the use of technology to help everyone have access to it from home. So we'll talk a little bit more about specifically what NewDays looks like soon. And so when we combine these approaches, we can see meaningful change. So we can see that people can regain meaningful abilities in their everyday life. We can see that they enhance attention, memory, and executive skills. And for some, as I mentioned, we can delay cognitive decline by months or even years. And of course, like anything, results can vary, but really the consistent message is that the brain responds to practice, purpose, and connection. And so these approaches have really gained a lot of recognition from major health organizations across the world. So the World Health Organization, the American Academy of Neurology, among others, they really all acknowledge the value of these types of non-pharmacological interventions, and they name them as the recommended standard of care for patients with mild cognitive impairment or dementia. And so if the evidence is so strong, really the question becomes is, why isn't everybody doing this? And so despite the decades of research that we have, we also know that these approaches are still under-recognized. Few people and even fewer healthcare providers are aware of them or maybe know who to refer to or know how to find support. And so we know along the left side over here, you can see that what the patient needs is a highly personalized intervention. That the delivery needs to be one-to-one, and there needs to be a high frequency or a high dose of the interaction or intervention. And ideally, it's delivered in a conversational form. Well, when we look at the healthcare system, and the fact that there's such a growing number of our aging population, this would really require millions of trained clinicians to be able to address this need. Realistically, there'd be a lot of cost barriers to this, a lot of wait lists with this. And as I mentioned, the awareness is overall low. And then the other thing too is there's a lot of stigma and fear around engaging in intervention. And so that may delay somebody really reaching out and getting access to this type of care. And so this is really where NewDays comes in. And so what NewDays is doing is using these clinical breakthroughs that have been occurring over the past couple of decades in the research, but also at the same time, AI was evolving more rapidly. And so we've been able to unlock solutions that really could not have even been thought of 2 or 3 years ago. So to really help you understand kind of how NewDays works, you're going to think of 2 things. So one is having video calls with an expert clinician. And so this is available to you in your home. These one-to-one video visits with a licensed clinician who specializes in cognitive treatment. So they provide that initial evaluation and cognitive testing. They go through what your functional goal setting might be. They'll talk about the results of your evaluation. And then from there, we'll continue doing one-to-one treatment sessions over telehealth. Typically, it's done every couple of weeks. And so in those sessions, they'll be working on cognitive exercises, providing emotional support, and maybe talking about different strategies to manage your daily life. And I'll talk a bit more about this at the end, but this component of the NewDays platform can be billed to one's insurance, just like you would bill your doctor's appointments to your insurance. And so the second component of NewDays is access to this state-of-the-art exercise, all in the form of conversation. And so Sunny is the name of our AI platform. And so Sunny engages users in a therapeutic conversation, and it's based on all of that clinical research that I was referencing. And so these regular interactions are designed to provide cognitive stimulation, social engagement, and personalized exercises that complement the work that you're doing with your clinician in those telehealth sessions. And so typically these conversational exercises, they'll range from 15 minutes to an hour long. And the AI has the ability to really structure and run the conversations in a particular direction. And so the second component of the NewDays platform is a membership fee. So this is an out-of-pocket cost of $99 per month. And so this diagram here sort of shows you the interplay through of what it looks like to interact with the NewDays platform. So I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but at the top of the diagram, you can see our NewDays member or user who is interacting along the left with our clinician via telehealth sessions. The NewDays member is also interacting with our AI platform, Sunny, doing regular brain exercises at home. The interesting part I like to highlight is along the bottom here and the interaction between the clinician as well as the AI platform. So the clinician is able to oversee the AI, and the AI, and this is what I wish I had when I was doing more clinical practice, is the AI is able to summarize what's going on in those conversations back to the clinician. So the clinician's really going into your future appointments, understanding what's been discussed in between those two sessions. And so here are just sort of a few of the reasons, why we should be feeling hopeful about all of this. The focus used to be more so on just finding a cure. And while obviously research communities are still trying to do this, the shift has also been on, what can we do to focus on prevention and slowing cognitive decline? We also used to talk more so about, if we had a diagnosis of dementia, immediately people might think of the word disability, but we know that now we can really work on skills and strategies to improve someone's function and quality of life. And as I mentioned before, people used to just be told, or maybe still are being told, to just wait and see, but we know more and more that there's a lot we can do to act now. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to show you a couple of videos. One is going to show you one of our members interacting with Sunny, so you can kind of get a sense of what that feels like.
This should be a fun exercise. Let's use our memory and creativity at the same time to remember words and create sentences. Would you like to give this exercise a try?
Sure.
Great, I'm glad you're up for trying this out. So here's how it works. I'll say two simple words, and your job is to remember those words and make a sentence or two with them. Think of it like a little puzzle where you fit the pieces together. It's okay if it feels a bit tricky at first, but we'll adjust the difficulty as we go along to make sure it's just right for you. And remember, I might make mistakes too, so we're in it together, okay? How about we start with the words cat and window? What do you think you can come up with using those words?
The cat is in the window.
That was a perfect sentence. You used both words beautifully, and I could picture the cat sitting there. Now let's move on to our main exercise. This time, try using the words garden and raincoat in a sentence. And remember, feel free to ask for help if you need it. What do you think you might come up with using those words?
I left my raincoat somewhere in the garden.
I see you've created a scenario with your sentence. It's great how you combine the idea of the raincoat and the garden together so naturally. Let's keep the creativity going with the words river and bicycle. What kind of sentence can you come up with using those?
I rode my bicycle by the river.
I see you mentioned riding your bicycle. That was a beautifully clear sentence, and I could almost feel the breeze by the river. You did so well in the last round. We're going to bump up the difficulty a bit and aim for 3 words this time. The words for this round are book, tree, and cup. Can you think of a sentence that includes all 3 of those words?
I like to read my book in a tree with a cup of coffee.
I like how you connected those ideas. You've painted a cozy picture of reading up in a tree with your cup of coffee. Let's try another round with new words: hat, city, and sunshine. What story can you create with those words?
I wore my hat into the city to keep the sunshine out of my eyes.
Great. So you could see, with that interaction with Frank, the conversation was focused on a particular sort of cognitive skill. And so when you're working with Sunny, it's learning about you, and it's learning about what level you're at in terms of your memory decline. And so, for example, if we have someone who maybe has been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, or maybe just has subjective concerns around their cognition, the conversations will become more challenging versus someone who perhaps is at a later stage in their dementia diagnosis. Those conversations will be a bit more simple and easier. And so they may be more just about particular topics or themes or your past, for example. So this next video I'm going to play for you is more of a compilation of some of our users as well as care partners talking about their experience with NewDays.
It's hard to explain to somebody, but they're a different kind of conversation than what you usually have. Like, oh, the weather, you know, it's raining again, or just superficial kind of stuff. It's a whole different conversation. Every time I do it, I come out of there with a smile on my face because it either reminds me of some great memories or some silly memories with my sister or road trips or whatever. And it gets me thinking and stuff. Every one of them has brought back memories that I hadn't thought about in years.
It works your mind. It is I think that too much of memory loss is somewhat isolating just by its nature. My father had it. And these steps are good because you're reorienting yourself to complex thoughts. People have somewhere they can communicate at their level without feeling nervous about it or some shame in their inability to remember something.
He's always positive when he finishes it, like he likes doing it. So I think, one thing in the memory loss community we always look at is even if you don't remember it later, if it's positive when you do it, that's a good thing because with memory loss, you remember the feeling, but not the details. Mm-hmm. I think one of the challenges with taking care of someone with memory loss is time. That's the biggest challenge because you want to do what you can for them. So like, for example, when Frank and I sit down and we play games together, you get the benefit of not only him working his brain, but there's that social benefit. And I think if he had more things he could do on his own, that it would help him more than when he does, like if he plays games on his computer, he's got these games down. He can play them without thinking that hard. But if he has AI to interact with, my hope is that it stimulates his brain enough that actually he holds on to things a little bit longer. And in his case, maybe gets back a little bit of what he's lost.
I like trying new things, learning new things. And I think it helps me stay more current and capable, independently capable. I think you sometimes gotta focus on things to intentionally try to keep up with times and health and everything. So I think it's gonna. Well, I can see that it could be like exercise. You go to the gym and you exercise to try to keep your body active, and this just focuses on trying to keep your mind active.
It's outside my daily living. It's very expanding because it's not like anything I say or do day by day, week by week, month by month. It's like having a conversation with a person because it's responsive. She relates and responds to what you're saying. And the only thing that's not like AI is just a bit of inflection. There's not that inflection. That's the only thing that makes me realize it's not human.
I think what it's doing for me personally is giving me an opportunity to use my brain more. I think living in this community, a lot of things are routine. A lot of the people I interact with, it's at a level that is not necessarily require me to pay attention or think or try to use a good vocabulary, any of those things that this does. And so I like it from that standpoint. I think that the overall experiences of doing these has been, I think, very interesting and helpful to me because it makes, like I said, it makes me think, which I don't often have to do these days in my life. Most of my life is routine.
I think the benefit would be huge because it's therapy without being therapy. There's no judgment that's sitting on the other side of you, which is not the case with a therapist. I think you will find that there's a great benefit for you and that it's safe.
So when my sister was trying the program, I was surprised that she said so much, that she talked so much. Normally when we have other people around, it's not just us, but
there are other people around, she won't talk very much at all. But when Sunny asked her questions, she just started talking and she said so much. And a lot of the things she said, I had never heard. It was amazing. It was really shocking to me. I mean, I haven't seen her talk to people the way she talked to Sunny. She said so much more than she would normally say. It was really amazing to me. I think because of the judgment issue. I really think that's a bigger deal than I had thought. I think that when people are talking to Sunny, they don't have that sense of, oh, I wonder what that person's going to think. They just don't worry about it. So a lot more comes out, a lot more information, stories. There's just no judgment. And I even felt that a bit when I talked to some. When I first saw this program and saw how it worked, I immediately thought about my mom and how it would have helped her so much. And I wished, it kind of made me sad. I wish that she had been able to experience that. I think it really would have helped her because she tended to be quiet around people because I think that we are all very sensitive to feeling judged when we talk.
Good. So I always show that video because I think it's really valuable to hear from some of our users, but also their care partners and their experience. And so we have a research team that has carried out a lot of in-depth interviews with care partners to really better understand their role and the impact that NewDays has had on them. And some of the common themes that have come up is that they really value that NewDays, has provided meaningful support. So the care partners really value seeing their loved one engaged in something that they know is evidence-based. And it also gives respite for the care partner. They also really liked that their involvement in the NewDays program would vary depending on each person's needs. So some care partners may not be involved at all if they aren't needed, whereas others may be involved a bit more and attend some of those telehealth sessions. And so care partners really, like having access to the clinician. It helps them feel supported and also connected to the circle of care and to the clinical team. These are just a few of the things some of our care partners and users have said. They found it to be totally amazing, and it's hard to believe that it's AI. This care partner said, I've seen such a change in him since he started. It really gives me hope. And when he's in a better place, I'm in a better place. And so now what? What would be the next steps? And so one of the great things is you can go on yourself and try out Sunny for yourself. And so you can do that by going to the NewDays website, and in the top right corner, it will say try for free. There's no commitment at all, but it's just an opportunity for you to interact with Sunny and get a feel for it. So I always recommend people try that and do that first, and then let us know what you think. And then the next great step is you're able to sign up for one of our free introductory conversations. And so this is meant to be sort of a 30-minute conversation with one of our clinicians. It's more educational focus, so it's not meant to be a clinical assessment, but really to talk about your concerns or your loved one's concerns and the questions that you have. And so this can be available to you within a few days. As I said, there's no cost or commitment to that either. But it's just a good opportunity to get any of the answers that you may be looking for. And so this is officially launching later this week, and you guys are the first to hear about this. And so if you're interested in doing something like this, you can email or call us and we'll set that up for you. And so then lastly is to actually sort of sign up with the NewDays Clinic. And so just quickly as a review of what that looks like and how it works in terms of a billing perspective is one, having access to your clinical expert via telehealth sessions. And so that we can bill to your insurance. And then the second component is access to Sunny, and that is an out-of-pocket cost of $99 per month. And I'm going to hand it off to Megan just to talk a little bit about a pilot program with NewDays. And I'll also share that Megan has access to a referral or sign-up code. So for any of you that do want to join that pilot program, you will have that first month, that first monthly membership fee off. So that's a $99 value. So take it away, Megan.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Samantha. We are trialing a pilot, and by a pilot, I really just mean we're trying to get some interested people to try NewDays, because our team here at the Wellness Center, we really believe in this platform and the benefits that you can get from it. And you don't need a physician referral, which is also really awesome. So what we're trying to do, it's like a two-pronged goal here, is to get some people from the Wellness Center who are already our clients to try out NewDays for a little bit of time. One, so that we get some feedback from our wellness community to understand how your experience has been, and two, to improve upon that referral process from us. How can we make that experience better for you? Talking with the NewDays team. So it doesn't have to be a cohort of a specific number of people. We're not going to be necessarily tracking any data. It's not that type of a pilot. We're just looking for interested people who think this would benefit you or someone you care for. And we will facilitate that referral over so that you can work with NewDays. You get that discount from being in our community, and then let us know what your experience has been so we can keep improving upon it. So I will be sending an email with today's recording, as well as information on NewDays, how to get to their website, and then how to join the pilot. And all you have to do is respond to me. So you can find me in the gym, you can email me directly, and I just need some information from you, and I can go onto our referral website and refer you over there and move forward from there. So with that, do you have questions?
I see that Rachel's been answering some as they come up, which is great, because we only have a few minutes left. So thank you for doing that, Rachel. And I also, before we wrap up, I do want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time to listen. I appreciate it.
There was a question about Arizona. So we're currently available in California, Texas, Florida, and the state of Washington. And then we're working to get to more states. So unfortunately, someone who lives in Arizona can't take advantage of the clinical component. You can still go to newdays.ai and try out Sunny, and we provide free like test conversations essentially with Sunny, and a new one is shared each day. So you can at least get that experience. And then hopefully we'll be in Arizona soon. It's definitely a priority state for us. But we have to be clinically licensed there. So it's a whole process.
Rachel, do they need to do the clinical piece to pay the monthly fee to work with Sunny? So if they are in Arizona and they just want to start having conversations outside of the clinical piece, can they, or they're required?
Yeah, you can do that for free. It's not, you're not getting that whole, like Samantha showed, a triangle of like this whole, kind of cycle of support. We believe very strongly in the importance of having a clinician in the loop. I'm sure you've heard of other AI things that are popping up for seniors, and that's like a companion kind of thing. What we're providing is, therapy. It's these therapeutic conversations. So the most effective way is to have the clinician in the loop. That being said, the Arizona person, or even someone who's in California where we do have clinicians, you can go ahead and try those conversations for free. It's just lacking that oversight. So like at some point we hope you either like join the clinic or move on. But AI, it's also new. We really wanted to make it available for people to try. And people, I mean, I do it all the time and I don't see the clinician, and it does actually really work out your brain. So everybody here is free to do that for free. But in terms of like the clinical trials and the clinical evidence behind the impact of the program, having that human in the loop is really important.
Thank you. And I'll answer Mary, her question, is there a cost for the pilot? So you get the 30-day free with the code from working through us. And then if you decide to move forward with Sunny, that would be an out-of-pocket for you, and then the insurance for the clinical. So to answer that. And just because we have 3 minutes, I do see a brain health question I think might be good for you, Samantha. I'm well organized, but only because I write everything down. Is that a good or a bad thing for my brain health?
It's a good thing for your brain health. So whenever we're working on our memory, we try to do two things. One is we'll use something called external strategies to help us remember things. And so that's what you're doing there by writing things down. You're using a strategy to ensure that you don't forget. It makes you feel more productive. It makes you feel more confident and happy that you're remembering things. But we also want to do things to challenge our brain. And so someone can also choose to not write things down if they want to try to remember it all themselves. And that would be a way to challenge your brain. But we like to do a combination of both. So if you are someone who's finding you're forgetting things and it's helpful to you to write them down so that you don't forget whatever it is, then that's great to keep doing that. And then we know there's all these other ways that you can challenge your brain at the same time. It's a good question.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Well, like I said, I will get this recording and all this information. If you're interested in the pilot, all of that sent out to you as soon as I can. If for some reason you got this Zoom link from a friend and didn't actually register, you won't receive this. So please email me directly. And just a reminder, if you are interested in the pilot, that's a direct email to me as well. Samantha and Rachel, thank you so much for coming today and doing this. This was a fun tag team conversation, and I'll be talking to everyone soon.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.